550 KT, 910, Big 550 KTRS. We're broadcasting from the St. Louis Closet Company world headquarters here on Big Bend in Maplewood, just north of Manchester. We'll be here for another hour, but this is the kickoff to the Toys for Tots campaign. And they'll be here all holiday season, and they'll be open. All you do is bring a new unwrapped toy, or a wrapped toy, unwrapped but new, wrapped in the plastic, unwrapped in not in wrapping paper, to St. Louis Closet Company and any of the Toys for Tots drop-off locations, including the Big 550 KTRS out at Westport, and then the Marines will make sure that they get into the hands of the needy. St. Louis Closet Company been a presenting sponsor of this for a number of years, and so we thought, what a great idea to come out and hang out in Maplewood and help kick off with some great people. So with that being said, our next guest is no stranger to the audience, a former traveling professor for the University of Oklahoma.
Professor, University of Oklahoma.
University of Oklahoma.
I left, and their football team went south.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Interestingly enough, as a Nebraska Cornhusker, I didn't know I'd be able to talk to you anymore. Dick Weiss, ladies and gentlemen, used to be on the show lots of times. Dick, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, good to be here.
And your guest, your friend with you is Edna Campost Gravenhorst. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And so you guys have, or Edna, you have written a book, and Dick, you've written the foreword, and Edna, the book is about a department store.
Yes, it's Famous-Barr, St. Louis shopping at its finest. Famous-Barr was around for 95 years in St. Louis.
And when did it dissolve? When was it bought out? How did all that happen?
Macy's bought them out in 2006.
2006, and so that was the end of Famous-Barr.
Exactly.
Why is Famous-Barr so famous that it deserves its own book?
Well, because the people of St. Louis love Famous-Barr. They have great memories here, Christmas shopping, bridal gowns. The people of St. Louis were very upset when they changed the name from Famous-Barr to Macy's.
Right. And then Macy's stayed there a couple years, and then Macy's left, right?
Well, Macy's is still here, but the downtown store closed in 2013.
And that now
which was tragic.
It's now housing the T-Rex, among other things, right? The new T-Rex technology deal.
Yes.
Dick Weiss, the reason why you're here and the reason why you were asked to write the foreword is because your mother was famous, right? I mean,
a lot of people identified the store with my mother. She was there 40 years.
Right.
She started, I believe, in the late 60s. Is that right?
That's correct.
And she got going with them because she was a volunteer with the book fair. And the book fair had its tent and its annual event. I think it was in April. Every year on the Famous-Barr parking lot. She got to know the people at Famous-Barr, and this was right around the time when public relations, that whole idea of reaching out to the community, other than just selling people stuff, but reaching out and getting them engaged with the store in other ways, was developing, and she got a part-time job at Famous-Barr. They paid her once. As a joke, the store manager gave her pay in a candy box, and they took out the Mavracos chocolates and they put in quarters.
Nice.
And gave her a box of candy that I think the chocolates were worth more.
So she was the first PR expert for Famous-Barr.
Yeah, they call it special events, they called it.
Now, I met her once or twice. And she was gregarious and fun-loving, and she knew I was a member of the media, and she was great in terms of that.
Right.
But there are a lot of great PR people like that. What was it about his mother that, I mean, because you mention his mother, and everybody knows who she was.
Exactly, because it wasn't just being the PR person at Famous-Barr, but Helen was a community leader. Helen did so much for the community of St. Louis, and she is loved by so many people. So it wasn't just what she brought to Famous-Barr. It's her volunteer time for the community. I mean, she really promoted St. Louis in such a good light.
Yeah.
And she loved reporters. She loved the media.
Because of you, or just?
Well, my dad was a TV news producer at Channel 5, and so she really appreciated the news.
Right.
And so she would have all these reporters over for dinner. No agenda. She would just have them over to dinner and feed them, and they loved her for that, and they loved her because she took an interest in them beyond, what was the next story that she could get in the paper about Famous-Barr, and she had tremendous luck. I would tell her, I worked at the Post-Dispatch for 30 years, and I would get her press releases, and I said, Mom, just make sure they're on white paper so I can recycle them. But other people did her bidding. I remember once they renovated the elevator, or not the elevator, the escalators at the downtown store.
Right.
And somehow that ended up on the front page, like big deal,
Right.
big whoop.
Right.
But front page.
So was Famous-Barr be as famous, except for Helen?
Well, I think during the time that she was there, which was for over 40 years, she made sure that Famous was famous, and because of that,
Right.
it made Helen famous.
But I mean, whether the windows, right? If people don't do that anymore, people don't go window shopping here in St. Louis. They might fly to New York and walk down Fifth Avenue or something, but they don't do that here. They don't sort of make the department store a destination anymore.
The thing is about Helen is that, see, Helen was an artist. When it came to visual merchandising, I mean, she was a true artist. She was so creative, and the ideas that she came up with, like having live animals in windows, in store windows, well, that would create a lot of ruckus. I mean, you're walking downtown, and you see live bears in the window for holiday.
Right.
And so, see, she came up. The thing was that I think that Helen really knew how to push it.
Well, she had, I think a lot of the ideas she borrowed, and she would make them bigger. You may remember, I'm sure you do, McGraw, the Wonder Bra. And
How can I forget it?
Yeah, and that was a big phenomenon.
It's burned on my brain.
She had the Wonder Bra arrive in its own limousine at Famous-Barr, and so she was great with the ideas. And of course, the Fair St. Louis with all the fireworks and so on, that started with a Famous-Barr sponsored event down the riverfront before the VP people took that over. But I think she'd be the first to say that Famous-Barr is what it is, was what it was, because of people like Stanley Goodman and Morton May and some David Farrell was I think the last CEO who really ran that place brilliantly, and it always the place May Company always made money. The stock always went up, and but then things changed for department stores.
Right, the world changed.
Yeah.
The book is called Famous-Barr, the St. Louis Shopping at its Finest. Edna Campos Gravenhorst. Where can I get the book?
You can get it at Barnes & Noble. Matter of fact, I have a book signing coming up this Friday from 6 to 8.
Which
Barnes & Noble, West County.
West County, which is in West County Mall.
Right.
Yeah, okay, good. And then, of course, online and everywhere else, is there a website to find out more?
Yes, it's part of the History Press. And it's listed there.
And you're on Facebook, too.
I'm on Facebook. Oh, thank you, Richard. I actually have see, it's good to have
I got a little bit of my mom in me.
Yes.
That marketing genius.
I was going to say that's one thing about Helen is she came up with some great, grand ideas, and she had the support, to follow through with those ideas. But I do have a Facebook group page for Famous-Barr for the book. And the neatest thing about there is if anybody is listening to us and you have a family member or you have information about Famous-Barr, please go online on Facebook and post photographs. Matter of fact, right now that is an online museum for Famous-Barr.
I mean, it really talks about how, you know what, we're going to open up a store out in the country. Right, and it talks about how all the world's changed. So it really is the history of Famous-Barr. Quickly, before we let you go, Santa Claus and department stores. Any great stories about Helen and Santa Claus and being a nice Jewish boy? Do you have any great Santa Claus stories?
That was the great thing. My mother was Jewish, and she made Christmas wonderful for all the Gentiles.
Yeah,
and she was among those advocating having African American Santas before. That was
right. Yeah.
That was very controversial at one point. And,
right.
And so that was a big thing for her. She was always advocating. I remember when the Boy Scouts started having some issues with gays.
Right.
She went to the top brass and said, "We got to stop doing business with the Boy Scouts. Don't do anything for them." And you imagine telling a CEO who was probably an Eagle Scout,
right,
not to have anything to do with the Boy Scouts.
I thought you were saying she was going to advocate for a gay Santa.
A gay Santa. Well, I'm sure they're there. I'm sure they're there. One thing we should mention that's
Yes.
in the book that people will want to get it, if for nothing else, is that the recipe for the onion soup is in there.
How about the fudge? Recipe for the fudge in there?
Is the fudge in there?
No, but there is a photograph of them making fudge in the kitchen.
Okay, all right. So
There are some other recipes in the book.
the French onion soup recipe is in here.
Yes.
The book signing is at Barnes & Noble, Friday, West County Mall. What time?
6 to 8 p.m.
6 to 8 p.m. Bookstores everywhere, online, Facebook, Famous-Barr. Famous-Barr, the St. Louis shopping at its finest. Edna Campos, Gravenhorse, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Helen died how long ago, Dick?
She died in 2008, just before Barack Obama was elected president.
Yeah.
And we were scrambling around to see if she could vote
Of course you were.
absentee. Absentee.
And she did 4 times.
And if we were in Chicago, it would have happened.
Dick, always a pleasure. Edna, thank you for coming in. Good luck with the book.
Thank you so much.
The difference between a leader and a non-leader back to back. We'll tell you about that, and 2 distinct clips that you'll be talking about for years to come. We'll talk about it and explain it next in the Big 5